When St. Isaac Jogues said that he would give all of his blood from every vein of his body and his heart for the salvation of the people of the Mohawk Valley, he meant that and he did that. And the adage that we've heard all of our lives, that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the faith, literally happened here. With his death in 1646, it was only 10 years later that a little Mohawk Algonquin baby was born who would become St. Kateri Tekakwitha. And the Mohawks had an interesting tradition that as a child grew, they would change their name to reflect an outstanding characteristic. So what happened with this baby, she had a baby brother was born, and soon after that, the great scourge of the Europeans, disease, devastated the village. And it killed the mom and dad, it killed the baby brother, and little Aragode was badly scarred, and the smallpox infection got into her eyes and nearly blinded her. So when she was adopted by her father's family, her uncle who became the chief, they changed her name to what we know her today as Tekakwitha. Five, 6 years went by. The Iroquois raids on the St. Lawrence, taking captives, taking furs, disrupting trade. This whole war between the Huron, Iroquois, French was still going on. And they chose October of the year to send a virtual army into the Mohawk Valley on horseback with guns and torches. And they burned everything to the ground. It was on fire. And when it was over, all their furs and all their food for the winter was gone. Of course, it brought them to their knees. Many starved that winter. So by the time she's 10 or 11 years old, she has lost her family and her vision and her health and her home and stability. Very traumatized. But it wasn't till 1667, 21 years after the martyrdom of St. Isaac Jogues, that they came and settled and built a chapel. And they recognized a gentleness and a humility and a modesty about her, an inquisitiveness. And she recognized something different. She was too young to say what, but she recognized there was a spark between them. Finally, with instruction from the Black Robes, against the wishes of her uncle, he finally said, if you're going to do it, at least don't leave. Stay in the village. And they, at the same time, were saying, how is it? How is it she is so advanced in virtue? Okay? She hasn't been formed. There's something about her character. There's something about the way the Holy Spirit has been speaking to her. How has this happened? So the more she learned about Christianity, and that Christian women don't necessarily have to get married, wow, that was a big attraction for her. And then the main thing, I think, she learned from the Black Robes that his death and his torture and his suffering were not about vengeance and hatred and breaking people down and power and control. It was about love. It was about self-sacrifice. Started to click. So she was baptized when she was 20 years old. So that was 9 or 10 years from when she was first introduced to the Black Robes. That took some time. But she was baptized and given the name Catherine, for Catherine of Siena, which was a common name the Jesuits were using at the time. And through the years, that became Kateri or Kateri or Kateri, different ways to say it. And she stayed in the Mohawk Valley for about a year, but she fled and never came back. Must have been terribly difficult for her. This was all she knew. These were her people. So after a year, she left. She was escorted by Christian men who she knew from the north, from the Jesuit missions. And she developed kind of a following of other Native people. Some had already been baptized, some hadn't, so she was catechizing others. And she still had this drawing to, there's something missing. Why are they still bothering me to get married? Why can't I just love Jesus and do penance and do charity and pray with my friends? And she took a trip to Montreal where she met a community of sisters up there. A group of women who live together for love of Jesus, who don't marry, who do charity, who do penance, who pray together. This is what I am. She must have been so validated. I'm not the only one. So she maintained her own little religious community. Her mortifications were severe. Too much, the priest would tell her to stop. You know, she'd jump into these frozen rivers to pray the rosary, barefoot in the snow. She'd sleep on thorns because she wanted to unite her body with Jesus on the cross. And she wanted to unite her soul with him in the Blessed Sacrament. So her devotion to the Mass and to the Blessed Sacrament was intense. So when she became ill, everyone in the village wanted to stay close to her. They knew she was sanctified. And she died on the Wednesday of Holy Week in 1680. And the first miracle was that all those terrible scars, like within 15, 30 minutes. It wasn't just the priests who said this. Visitors walking past the longhouse noted, who's that beautiful woman in there? And almost instantly, within days, people are having apparitions of her. Her good friends would see her. When she appeared to her spiritual director there, 2 hour apparition in her beatific state with the cross. I love the cross on earth. I love it even more in heaven. When the Jesuits bought this property here at the shrine and opened the cause, or furthered the cause, I should say, to canonize the martyrs, they included her. 1930. She was made venerable in 1943, and then, gloriously, Pope St. John Paul II, in 1980, 300 years after her death, said, we've had 300 years of testimony of healings through her intercession. We know by the writings of the priests that of her heroic virtue. We don't need a documented miracle. We're going to beatify her. So in 1980, she was beatified, Blessed Kateri Tekakwitha. Finally validated, and by 2012, when she was canonized by Benedict XVI, this is a beautiful story. It was because of a little boy who lived up in the Northwest in Washington State, a little 5-year-old boy of Native American ancestry. Little Jake, he fell, cut his lip, got infected with a flesh-eating bacteria. And he's in the hospital. He's in a drug-induced coma. Antibiotics aren't helping. They're pumping this oxygen chamber onto him, nothing. Providentially, there's a conference of the Tekakwitha Conference in Seattle at that exact time when he's in ICU in a Seattle hospital. The dad knows one of the women there, says, please, can you come? Just pray for him. There's nothing else we can do. And a sister of St. Anne named Sister Kateri Mitchell, brings a little first-class relic of Blessed Kateri to the hospital, to the ICU, lays it on his body. They pray for him. They go back to the conference, everybody prays for him. The doctors in that hospital testified it was on that day that the disease stopped spreading. And that was the key. Once it stopped spreading, they could get a handle on it. They took him out of the coma. The antibiotics started, the surgeries, cosmetic surgery, everything that needed to be done for this little boy. And that was the miracle. Physical healings, mental health healings, addictions, remarkable intercessory powers that she has in Jesus Christ, her beloved spouse. It was all about him for her, and she teaches us that it should be all about him for us as well. So St. Kateri is our white martyr here at Orisville. The Jesuit missionaries were the red martyrs, blood shed in the ground, but she was persecuted in other ways, as we are, as we should be. If we live our faith publicly, we will be. Jesus told us we would be, and we can look to her for strength. She went through it, she persevered, she's been raised to the altars of heaven as a canonized saint, you know. All of them are three martyrs, and St. Kateri can show us the way from these holy grounds at Orisville.